The iPhone then does an HTTP, well, it ups that interface, and it's on a completely separate AT&T network. It's on a different IP range, and your iPhone actually talks to a Lucent Alcatel visual voicemail switch. Does some crypto stuff, some authentication things, and it downloads your visual voicemail. So at any time, you could have up to 3 different networks bridged on your iPhone when you're receiving visual voicemail. And if you're curious, if you were to intentionally put something on that APN and try to route across it, you can't really go far. I'm just saying. It's what we do, right? PDP IP2, I'm not really sure. I've never seen it up. I don't know what that does. PDP IP3, the third internal interface, that's used with tethering. So anytime that you tether your iPhone, even though you're not supposed to, that is what you would use. It runs a little DHCP server to give your Mac or your PC or whatever an IP address. So for the purposes of this talk, we're going to focus on PDP IP0. And you can see that AT&T has assigned that interface the IP of 1069.62.220. That is the NATed IP that you would live on when you're behind AT&T's cellular IP, 3G, Edge, whatever network. So a little note here, in July 2007, the iPhone dev community figured out that the root password on everybody's iPhone is Alpine. And we all got a big kick out of it, and you're like, oh, stupid users, I should change all their passwords, blah, blah, blah. And so I started looking around to see, well, exactly how is this manifested in the real world? How many people are exploiting this, or how many people really know what to do when everybody has the same password? And the only thing that I could really find was some mailing list chatter. There was a school admin who was saying that kids on the dorm networks, they were rooting people's iPhones over the wireless network, which is a kind of a contained issue, right? It isn't some widespread problem. Well, so big deal. You're at a hacker convention with your stupid default root password, and people root your iPhone, and it affects just people at the convention. Well, what I found in about May timeframe of last year is that AT&T did not filter IP to IP traffic on their network, behind their NATed network. So when you're on AT&T's network and you think, well, I just have my little phone, whether it's the cheapy little free phone with your little WAP browser, or if it's your BlackBerry, or if it's your laptop Connect card, or any of these 3G services, your Kindle, whatever you have, you think, well, it's just me connected to the internet. What I found was it's actually a lot like this. I found multiple /16, multiple Class B networks that I could see from my iPhone or from my wireless card inside of their NATed network. So there's a lot of stuff out there. So your smartphone, your laptop, your BlackBerry, your Windows smartphone, PDA, whatever, has been on one giant flat network with everybody else. I'm going to talk about some of the things that I saw out there. So you can kind of just see everybody. If you use some SNMP tools, you can see a lot more, but not anymore because I fixed everything. So I started looking around, and I conducted 52 scans. And I should say 52 scans using Nmap that actually saved the data for, so I could process it later on, looking for 4 known ports. The reason why I was looking for 4 known ports is because when you're, has anybody ever done port scanning over a cellular network? Probably maybe fooled around a little bit. It's not exactly like plugging into a gig-y T5 and just letting it rip, right? It's a little higher latency. Average, you're looking at 200 to 300 milliseconds ping times, so it's fairly slow. So in order to quickly identify devices that I could see, I was only looking for 4 known ports. I would also conduct port scans of entire Class Bs and /24s, and what I would do is basically fire up Nmap, put my phone on my nightstand, go to bed, and see what I got the next morning because it would take that long. And sometimes it wouldn't finish, so I had incomplete data. But I had 52 total complete scans. Now, one thing to note about port scanning from your iPhone. I could have, I guess, popped my SIM card out, put it in my old Air card, slapped it in my laptop, and just done it that way. Your iPhone gets very, very, very hot when it's slinging out that many packets. Now, that isn't my iPhone, but it's an awesome conference slide, right? I fire up a Nmap, lay it on my nightstand. My wife would pick up my phone. She's like, "Why is your phone so hot?" I'm like, "It's busy." When the cellular network's going and the CPU's going, it's not exactly the use case that Jobs and the gang probably thought of when they threw it out there. But I kind of thought that there was something cool about doing all these scans from my iPhone. So what did I find? I technically found 10,589 some odd IP addresses up, so something that responded to the initial ping sweep. If any of you have ever done really large scans, Class Bs or anything bigger, you know that you kind of got to do an initial ping sweep. Well, that's what I did. So about 10,000 devices responded in some way, and of those devices, I found that 83 were running SSH. 24 were running port 80, and again, this is all on AT&T's natted IP network. When you go to DEF CON or you go to Shmoocon, you're like, well, I'm not getting on that terrible, dirty network, I'm just going to use my air card. Well, it's not, or it used to not be 100% safe. Yeah, people had web servers running out there. Who knows what they were? Maybe they were ATMs. I don't know. When I would go back later after I was reviewing the data, a lot of times these devices were no longer there, so it isn't like an ongoing pinned IP. I also found 4 people that happen to be running PDANet. How many of you guys know what PDANet is? It's a little tethering app. It uses some proxy technology. It's an open proxy. So when you run it on your iPhone, I could actually proxy through your iPhone on the netted network and then out of there. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Then I found 3,644 phones listening on port 62078, which that's the default port that non-jailbroken iPhones listen on, which is kind of odd that they bind it to the PDP interfaces. That should really only be bound to the loopback interface, and that port goes wild when you sync with iTunes. And if you Google around a little bit about that port, you'll find some USB muck stuff that some of the iPhone dev folks have been working on. And what I tinkered with for a while was trying to see if I could just sync people's music libraries over the cellular network using that port by piping TCP via USB mux, but yeah, that didn't work out so well. But it's interesting that they're tying it to all of the network interfaces, so maybe we'll see iTunes sync over the network soon. Another thing to note about port 22, when you jailbreak your iPhone, and you initially connect to port 22, there's about a 30-second delay while the iPhone initially makes its SSH key. So you'll establish the three-way handshake, and you won't get a banner for about 30 seconds later. And what that tells me is that's an iPhone that has never been SSH'd into before. And what I found was, well, I never found an iPhone that gave me the SSH banner right away. And what that indicates to me is that all the iPhones that I saw and that I examined, had never been logged into. So when you jailbreak your iPhone, there's a city of stuff. It gives you 3 choices, like a developer, hacker, whatever. Most people probably chose hacker because it sounds so awesome. And they install SSH and they never logged into it. Chances are they probably also didn't change their password. The other kind of interesting thing there is because it wouldn't respond right away, I may have lost some of the data, and map timed out. I don't know. So. Other stuff that I saw out there in the weird private NAT network is I saw a Linux box running SSHD. So it's probably somebody tethered their laptop with one of these little air cards, and they were running SSH. I saw a ton of Windows mobile devices, BlackBerries, Windows PCs. Now, while I was only looking for those 4 ports, when I was doing some of my initial probes and saying, wow, holy crap, there's a lot of stuff out there, I would find some devices that had no ports open. And I'm like, yeah, right. It's responding with resets on every single port. It must be something. So I would just do OS fingerprinting, and it came back as a Windows PC that somebody had tethered. Now, so it looks like AT&T probably figured it out from the cable modem companies. We should probably filter port 445 and 139, and that's something that people do on a lot of networks anyways, hotspots and stuff. So it was somewhat filtered, but I guess that they didn't factor a ton of jailbroken phones being out there. And PDANet for the iPhone is an open proxy. So this is my web browser tethered to my iPhone. And I was in Europe using my friend's foreign plan when I did that, not here in AT&T. This is somebody else's PDANet running on their iPhone, and if you set your proxy to use their iPhone IP, you technically surf out through their iPhone and then out of AT&T's network. So it's just like this bizarre little weird shadow network. So that's all well and good, and you guys have probably seen some media reports about this, you can hack iPhones. And so my colleague Nate and I only ever looked at Nate's iPhone, I didn't look at anyone else's. Nate's iPhone I found, well, I could SSH it. So I called Nate up and I said, hey, give me your AT&T IP, shut off your Wi-Fi. I want to see if I can log into your iPhone. He was at his house. I was at my house, not on Wi-Fi, and SSH root over to his AT&T IP on 62.100, logged in with the password Alpine. Okay, truth be told, Nate probably changed his password before that and set it back to Alpine for me. And you can see I'm logged into Nate's iPhone as root. Okay, big whoopee-doo. So once you get onto a box as root, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about this because it's kind of game over. But if you're interested, these are some interesting things that you can pull out. Everything's pretty much, all the good stuff is stored in private var mobile library. Mail, SMS, voicemail messages, address books, call history, notes, and exhaustive list. I actually pulled this from an iPhone's forensics webpage. Some interesting things in there was that the call history, address book, cookies. Cookies, that one may be kind of interesting. If you go to a lot of mobile optimized websites, they store a persistent cookie in your web browser. And if you were to steal the cookie file, maybe you could replay that and be logged into that user's session. After the Kismet chat yesterday, I started thinking, you know, if you were to submit some malicious JavaScript into the person's Safari cache with a cache lifetime of 9,000, that may be kind of cool. So that person kind of brings something evil with them no matter where they go. I mean, how many people clear their cache on their iPhone? It's like 27 clicks just to get into that screen. So I don't know, maybe there's something there. I'm just saying. So all right, so you made it onto the iPhone and you have root. And if I was at any other conference, I could probably spend another 30 minutes talking about all the great things you can do and I can read email and I can use more and I can grep. But let's do something a little bit more with a little bit more style. Those of you that have jailbroken your iPhones are probably familiar with a suite of utilities called Erica utilities. And they're command line utilities for the iPhone. And they're kind of useful. And the two interesting ones for this talk is a tool called Rec Audio, which essentially just turns on the onboard speaker and dumps whatever it hears to an AIF file. And then Find Me, which queries the local iPhone GPS API and spits out your latitude and longitude in XML format. So those two binaries are really interesting when you're logged into somebody's phone as they're walking down the street or if they're in a boardroom or whatever. For those of you that like pictures, or for those of you that were playing the, hey, it's snowing outside drinking game and have a hard time reading, this is a little graphical representation. What we're doing here is there's the attacker and there's the victim, or the willing participant, on AT&T's network, 62.220, 62.100, and what we're going to do is use SCP and SSH to copy things back and forth. As I stated at the beginning of my presentation, the flaw that enabled this over AT&T's network has been fixed as of about October 16th, or the day that I thought my service was canceled. I'm like, honey, we're going to have to get a new number, and I'm going to Cuba for a while. So what you get is a Courier font representation of exactly what we did. As you can see, I'm on Trevor's iPhone at the very top, and I'm using SCP to copy Rec Audio over to Nate's iPhone all over the AT&T NATA network. It's a little 19K file, so it was very quick. Once I'm on Nate's iPhone, I ran Rec Audio in order to turn on his microphone. Truth be told, the very first time you copy that over, you have to run LDID to sign the binary. For those of you that are going to bust me out for, well, you have to sign the binary. That's not exactly correct, Mr. Hawthorn. So as you can see on the previous slide, I ran Rec Audio and recorded whatever Nate was doing in his basement. Let it go for 20, 30 seconds, Control-C out of it, and you can see ls-l. There's the AIF file right there, October 22nd, blah, blah, blah. I just renamed it to something just quick and easy, test.af. Then I SCP'd it back over the network to my phone and then cleaned up the evidence. And by evidence, I mean just delete a couple of files and it's done. So deleted my audio recording, deleted the binary, and deleted bash history. And as you can see, if I run last, well, there is no last logs. I wouldn't say that the iPhone is a highly auditable, trusted computing platform. It kind of wasn't meant to be. So all right. So I logged into Nate's phone, and I recorded him doing things in his basement, doing research, and brought it back and listened in, and that was wildly boring. So other cool things. Well, there's another binary called OpenURL, which basically allows you to call registered URIs on the phone. So, OpenURL tell :/1900 profit. OpenURL tell 911. What do you mean? I'm at Starbucks. I didn't call 911. And this one's kind of related to, I can't remember who gave the talk. It was a couple years back, but it's one of the Bluetooth hacking things where I could cause your phone to dial mine. And so if you're in a boardroom talking about mergers and acquisitions, I will have your phone call mine, and then I would just sit there and listen in like I'm on speakerphone. So that'd be kind of cool. One little note here, I'm not entirely sure if it prompts the user, so you may have to hit, dial. So. I tried it last night, but Erica utilities they're broken on the latest version of the iPhone. If you're curious, my iPhone is currently not jailbroken. After I scared myself, I was like, I'm going to play by the rules. Of course, pillage the file system, look around. You could apt-get install TCP dump, nmap, and pretty much go wild on whatever E0 is connected to, which you may have to have a couple of things working, full disclosure, to make that work. If you think about it, what you essentially have is it's a dual-honed device that is possibly in the enterprise on the E&O network. And oh, by the way, it also has a connection to AT&T that prior to October, hackers may be running wild on. So in my little head, I thought, well, if I were to make it onto somebody's iPhone and they happen to be associated WPA with a certificate on the enterprise network, I'm inside of who knows where. So you can start mapping things and all types of stuff. So that's the first, this is related to that. One of the reasons why I think that AT&T fixed this issue was because of these guys. The first inkling when I was like, whoa, okay, the cow's out of the barn is in November of 2009, a Dutch kid logged into a bunch of people's iPhones on their networks and changed their background and said, hey, come to my website and pay me €5 and I'll tell you how to fix your phone. He quickly found out that was not a very good idea. And what's interesting about these two issues, the Dutch issue and then this one, this was another worm that was self-propagating in Australia, is I read all of the news articles and trying to find the most technical one that I could find. And it seems like these issues, these worms were scanning the routable IP that their carriers gave to their phones, which is kind of odd because if you're on a usage-based data plan and your iPhone has a world routable IP, I mean, any of you that have ever tailed your firewall logs, you know that there's just a bunch of crap that comes across to you. So I don't know, maybe their iPhones are always getting blown up. But nobody was really talking about what was going on the NATA networks, which I found interesting. So that all went down in November, but it was October when AT&T fixed the issue. So I'm thinking maybe, the carriers may have talked to one another and said, something's going on. And they said, we better fix that, which I'm surprised they didn't do earlier. The other thing that I should kind of give a little shout out here too is I looked around to see how many people were talking about inter-carrier security issues, and there really wasn't much. I was looking for like some old books on, 3G for Dummies and UMTS explained to try to figure out if there was much attention being paid to carrier IP security. And At Stake actually did a white paper as a result of some of the engagements that they had with their customers where they talked about these exact issues. So I don't want to say that I'm the very first person to ever think about this, so a little shout out to the old At Stake Symantec guys. After the worms came out, and it always seems like the first couple of exploits are all fun and games, and there's some lolcats involved. There's no lolcats in my whole presentation. I'm just going to say that right now. And then people kind of say, all right, let's get down to business and make it hurt. Whoops. And so two tools came out, and these were both discovered by the security firm Intigo. They have a great OS X and an iPhone security report from 2009. These guys discovered that there was the phone, this is what they tagged it, privacy.a, which is a command line Python tool that essentially you identify a exploitable iPhone, and you point the script at it, and it says, what do you want to download, basically, and you just start pillaging things. Somebody took that one step further, and this one's kind of interesting. They came up with iBotnet.a, again, discovered by these same guys, and it's a botnet on your iPhone that has a command and control channel, and even modifies Etsy hosts so that when you browse your, I think it was a Lithuanian banking site, you would go to somewhere else, so a little bit more suboptimal, if that's a phrase. So some good news. AT&T does segment part of their network. For example, I called a buddy of mine in California and said, hey, what's your AT&T IP? You know, anytime you call one of your friends, you're like, what's your IP? They're like, why? And I was like, oh, just hang on to it and tell me if your phone gets really hot. But I couldn't see them. That said, I could see cell phones that somebody told me were in Boston walking down the street, or the Carolinas. So it wasn't completely segmented. Again, right before I gave my talk, I did pop my SIM card into my air card, started scanning. I was like, just want to make sure that it's all still good and it's still filtered. I think that those worms probably gave the good folks at AT&T probably a pretty good scare. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in a second, but there's no real easy way to target a specific individual. So it's hard for me to say, hey, Joe, I want to attack your AT&T NAT IP. There's no way to correlate the IP address to a person via Safari. If you take your Safari mobile web browser to decloak.net, which tells you all types of interesting things behind your network when you go there, it just kind of doesn't work. And I really tried hard to look for like Java applets, but Java doesn't work in, or Flash for that matter, in Safari. And it's really slow. So if you don't have patience, if you have ADD and you're trying to get into somebody over the wireless network, it's slow. That said, probably the easiest way for me to say, you there, I want to attack your iPhone, is I would send you an email message, an HTML email. Most people, I think by default, even with the latest updates, they still allow images to automatically be rendered in mail. I send you an email message first of all, I would place my device on AT&T's network, get an IP address on their NAT network, and set up a listener netcat, or just run TCP dump, send you a specially crafted email message. When you view the message, your browser attempts to contact me to render that image, and I just watch for the inbound TCP send packet, or see who connects to my netcat listener, and bam, I have your AT&T IP. When you hit lock on your phone stays awake for a little while, and I found that when I would turn it on later, after some time had passed, it's a new IP. So once you pin down somebody that you want to go after, it's kind of difficult to follow them. Unless you were to get onto the phone and put some malicious JavaScript in their browser cache on one of CNN's, right, that always phones home to you, then you're like, oh, now you're there. I don't know. I didn't get that far. Well, what do? Everybody likes to paint doom and gloom in these talks, so I like to kind of say, well, this is some things. Don't jailbreak your iPhone if you really care about security. If you've spent some time in the Cydia store or in the Cydia repositories, that stuff doesn't exactly go through a strict QA process, let's say. A guy just did a talk at Black Hat DC where he actually got a malicious proof of concept app approved by Apple into the App Store that accessed pretty much all of the data stores on the iPhone just to show, look, we can do it. And that was after going through Apple's process. And if you know anything about the Apple developer review process, that's a pretty stringent, mysterious process. So the stuff that's in Cydia, there be dragons here. If you do jailbreak it, you obviously should change your root and mobile users' passwords. I shouldn't have to tell that to you people. And a shout out to the Cydia folks. There's no real reason to bind SSHD to the PDP interfaces, or all interfaces for that matter. It kind of should just be on E0, and there should be some sort of force user to change their password upon install. And a lot of people say, well, stupid users, they should just do that anyways. Well, I can tell you that there's a lot of maybe not the most technical security savvy people out there that are just using Black Rain, clicking, breaking their iPhones, and it's on there. And AT&T, you should filter your mobile-to-mobile IP traffic. They've already done that. So again, that's why I felt kind of comfortable giving this talk. So we're at the halfway point. I'll take questions at the end. The next part of my talk concerns privacy and location-based applications. How many of you, you fire up a lot of apps now and it says so-and-so would like to use your location. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I want Yelp to tell me the latest, the local stuff. And there's a lot of apps that ask for your location. That's one of the kind of cool things. For this talk, we're going to be talking about the game Underworld Sweet Deal. How many of you have ever heard of this game? Anybody? I checked this morning to see if anybody at the conference was playing it, and I didn't see anybody. Underworld Sweet Deal, it's kind of a cool game. They were the first one in the space, and it's a drug trafficking game with candy. Apple, they originally allowed you to basically sell pot and acid and heroin and all these cool drugs to one another, but when they went for the Apple review process, yeah, that didn't go over so well. You can get 50 iFart applications approved, but you're selling pot? No. And the concept in the game is you have to move product from point A to point B. You buy low and you sell high. So if I'm at my house in Loudoun County and I buy gumdrops or I buy waffles from somebody at a reasonably low price and I come here to DC and I fire the game back up, I check in with the game servers, it now knows that I'm in DC and it exposes my product to the local market and hopefully somebody will buy it from me at a profit, which allows me to raise my rank in the game. Now, in order for the game to expose you to all these new markets or to show you what's for sale, it has to acquire your geo coordinates from wherever you are. And this is a very common operation that a lot of iPhone apps do, is they want to know exactly where you're at so they can give you local results. I've yet to see an iPhone application that does not provide high-resolution latitude, longitude coordinates to the application server. How accurate is the iPhone GPS? It uses a combination of the cellular towers and Skyhook wireless, which is kind of a cool little concept. So it's fairly accurate, and I'll show you exactly how accurate. This is what the old game used to look like. Anybody familiar with the old game Drug Lords, okay? It's exactly like that, only it really matters. So you're like, honey, I have to drive down to the gas station because this guy wants to buy waffles from me and I need to get on his game tile. So you actually have to physically move your phone. And it's like, man, I've been playing the hell out of this game and my gas bill's through the roof, driving around like an idiot. But if you work for UPS or you're a pizza delivery man or you are on the go, you can really wreck shop at this game. So those are the old... So instead of the cool guys in front of the helicopter, this is kind of a little F you to Apple, I guess. Now they're like these benign donut guys. And this is what the game screen looks like. In the middle there, that's the interface. You can see, when the Redskins started doing really bad, I changed my player name to Jim Zorn. And all these other players, whenever I would drive around and check in, I would get these just horrible messages from people. So kind of funny. Really, not a lot of people in this room watch sports, all right? So here's the other players playing. There's Blumkin, guy down, Shake, a couple other people. Now, over on the far right, you can see that the game uses the Google Maps API, so you can kind of see who's around you. And it helps you maybe drive towards somebody so that I can go get closer to this person, get on their game tile, and sell them stuff. Now, this is the most high resolution or the most zoomed inness that the game offers. So you can't pinch and expand. So you can see that little blue character there, that's actually me sitting at my house in my neighborhood. The green things are game server bots, and then the little happy face guy is a sugar addict that I would sell to. Now there isn't any other player on my game screen, but you can see up at the top there's a couple little white characters, and over on the right, those are actually those are other real players. Now, in order for Google Maps or in order for the game to render those player locations on my iPhone, I had to request, hey, show me all the players in my area and bring it back to my phone. What are their latitude, longitude, so I can paint it on my Google Maps? Anybody see where I'm going with this? Anybody that does web app testing or anybody familiar with Paris Proxy knows that, basically you would fire up Paris Proxy on your laptop and you tell your iPhone to use your laptop as its proxy server, so you can intercept all HTTP stuff that goes in and out of your iPhone. And it's really interesting. It's a very chatty device. It phones home a lot to Apple. You'd be amazed at all the stuff that your applications send back to their servers. So you get to see what they send and what they receive. This is what the request looks like when you click on the Google Maps page. So you can see that it's a post to their game server. GameDLA.A steroids has my session ID at the time. It's not persistent, you jokers. And it logs me into the server. And there's a lot of different methods that it will push over XML, update location, buy, sell things, different game operations. The one that we're interested in is get GMAP objects. When it returns the data to you, it's basically serialized XML, and it all comes down in one big blob. And you can see, if you squint hard enough, GMAP objects at the very top. And then if you look closely in there, there's a couple of latitude, longitude values. Actually, there's a lot. It's the high-resolution coordinates for everybody in the DC metro area that's playing this game. So I found that if I took one of those latitude and longitudes and dumped it into Google Maps, well, so you see down there in the bottom right, there's this individual, and you can actually tell exactly what parking spot he's sitting in this parking lot. And I was like, oh, wow, that's really cool, and it's amazing that I picked this guy out of random to show during my presentation. So if you zoom the map back just a little bit, you see, okay, it's a parking lot, it's outside of some sort of facility. Maybe he's getting in that last waffle sale before he goes back into work to work for the man. And you pull back a little. Does anybody recognize this place? Yep. I knew. So you pull back a little bit more. What is this? Is it a college campus? I don't know what this is. Maybe some other people are recognizing where this is. Oh, my God. So does anybody else see the irony of me using a cell phone and a satellite map to track somebody that works for somewhere? Hey-o. So I was like, oh, wow, that's interesting. I'm not going to talk to my phone anymore. So I said, okay, well, let me see who else is playing around. And I apologize, it's kind of hard to see because I redacted the player's name. But if you look at that parking lot, does anybody recognize this building? It's in Langley. You can see that there's somebody sitting out in the parking lot. It's kind of funny, you always see people playing this game in the parking lot. It's kind of like they can't bring their smartphones that are jailbroken, well, this isn't jailbroken, with a camera and a GPS into where they work. So here's somebody sitting out at the CIA plane, probably getting in one last waffle deal before they go in. So at that point, I started getting kind of nervous because I sampled that in the morning-ish. So that's when they were at work. If I were to sample that in the afternoon-ish, I could see where they live. And that's where I said, I don't want to be in a dog kennel in Cuba, so let's pick on somebody else. So let's pick on Shake. Shake is, he actually lives not far from me. I've never met the guy, but every time I'm like at the store and I see somebody with their iPhone, I'm like, are you Shake? Are you him? And then I have to leave. And Shake is basically the number 2 player in the world. I think he must be a delivery guy or something. Let's find out about Shake. I feel bad for the guy, but I redacted all of his information other than his player handle. So you can see I do get GMAP objects. So again, once again, we're asking the server, hey, tell me all the people that's on my local tile, and it spits back all the XML. Take that XML, plug it into Google Maps. If you identify somebody's latitude and longitude when they're at a street address, Google correlates that to their address. So over there on the left-hand side is the guy's street with redacted info. I took that data and I plugged it into the Loudoun County Real Estate Assessment Database. If any of you have ex-girlfriends that you just can't get over, you use your email, you probably have Googled and kind of stalked people down before. Or maybe that's just me. So this is the county real assessment. So now I have the guy's name, address, tax history, etc. If you've ever been to a Johnny Long talk, you know that enough Googling and you can all of a sudden scare yourself and be, like, oh, I'm maybe a little bit psycho. But so, I found the guy's Facebook. And then if you take this one step further, his LinkedIn and his Twitter, and you know where you would know where he works because you just wait until, about 9 a.m. the next morning and see where he's playing his game at. I actually found somebody that was playing at a tech firm in Fairfax, and then it couldn't give me the address, so I just used Google Street View and looked up at the logo on the side of the building. And I was like, oh, so that's where he works. So that was kind of cool. All right, neat. What else? So we've kind of identified a couple of people here, a couple of players, interesting players that work in interesting places. How about a near real-time geolocation tracking system for players? That'd be kind of cool. Well, what do we need to make that? A little bit of curl plus some Perl, some cron tab, spits out a fantastic CSV file. You mash it through a little tool called GPS Babel, which converts GPS output from just a wide array of things and spits it out into a KML file. drop that into Google Earth, and it makes for just fantastic screenshots for your conference talk. So for the last, I probably let it run for a good 2 months. I set up a little cron job on my server that exactly mimicked the game to pull GMap objects constantly. And this is what the curl script looked like. Real quick, log in to get your session ID, update your location, and I can make my location wherever I want. Funny little story there. Well, I'll talk about that in just a second. And then get GMap objects, which returns you all the XML. You mash it through a dirty little Perl script that cleans it up into something that looks like this. So it's essentially CSV. Latitude, longitude, player name. The one other thing that I probably would have done if I had to do it over again was I would have put the time at the end so I could graph it over time. But there's a way to figure that out, and I'll show you here in just a second. So this is what New York City looks like. So I teleported myself because, again, the game server has to trust where you say you are. If you say, I'm in North Korea, it renders North Korea, and you can see that guy playing in North Korea. Or if you put yourself in downtown Manhattan, this is what it shows you. So these are all the people playing on Manhattan and surrounding areas. This is what it looks like in London, and these are all point-in-time snapshots, right? So I took one snapshot this morning from the hotel room right before I gave my talk. I was really hoping to be able to just bust somebody out and be like, man, I know what room you're in, and that's all I'm going to do. This is what it looks like in London. This is what Southern California looks like, all the people playing. And this is actually kind of masking how many players actually are. If you zoom in, a lot of these check-ins are kind of stacked over one another. So that's cool, point-in-time snapshots. Well, what if you really wanted to follow one person and see what do they do all day? And I'll fire up Google Earth here in just 1 second. We can actually zoom in. This is Shake. And the game, in order to play the game effectively, you have to leave the game on so that as you drive down the road, it's constantly checking in. It drives my wife crazy. You know, I sit there, well, she's driving because we're in a no-phone zone. And, you know, I'm constantly like, bloop, 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 yeah. And so anybody that wants to play this game and do it right, you have to leave the game on because every 30 seconds it checks in. And my cron job would check in every 60 seconds. So I always knew where somebody was. And I grepped out this person's name out of the CSV file and piped it into GPS Babel into KML. And you can see he leaves Loudoun County, goes down 267, up 495, up 270 to that area every single day. I know where he likes to eat for lunch because he checks in there quite a bit, what Starbucks he likes to catch on the way to work, and how long he spends there because I saw like, let's say 12 check-ins, and if it's every 30 seconds, you can kind of figure out how long he dwelled in that one location. If you zoom in, this is a restaurant in Ashburn, for those of you that are familiar with the area. This is the original steak sports dinner theater, whatever place. And if you click on that one check-in, you can see, well, I can tell you that area of the restaurant is the bar, so that's where he was. And he hung out there for, there's, about a dozen check-ins there, so you can kind of figure that he was there for a certain amount of time. So you can extract so much information about somebody based on where they go and what they do, and all of these iPhone apps ask you for your location. And this is just some guy that was massaging the data out of a game. If you were doing this to win, you know, if you were an application, I mean, it's very easy to figure out a lot about people. This is my colleague Nate. This is him going to get beer, going to get a haircut, and going to the bank. And we kind of set it up. I said, leave your iPhone on, leave the game running, I want to track you. So I tracked him as he roamed around. Sorry, I used that's your house. I saw it on there. This is another player, and I followed him out of Loudoun County. I don't know, there's a lot of players in Loudoun County. Down 267, and he goes inside the Beltway every day. I've tracked, I've seen, you know, people at school, at work, driving, whatever, playing. There's a lot of people out there. What's also interesting is I actually transported myself to the green zone in Iraq, and just to see, I wonder if there's anybody playing. And there were American-looking names. I'm assuming they were contractors playing in Iraq. And I did go to North Korea, and there was nobody there. Big shock. Nate went to, where were we at? Asia, and there was some guy, and he had a CIA icon. I was like, oh yeah, it's like the tourists that wear the CIA thing, yeah, undercover. In Kuala Lumpur. So it's an interesting game because you can kind of transport yourself around and see different people and stuff. That's pretty much it. If you have comments, feedback, want to follow me on Twitter, visit our website. Big shout out to Tiago Stock for helping me out with the Perl script. We have about 15 minutes left for you to go drink or ask questions. So thank you very much. What inspired me? I was curious, and I like to see what all my applications do. So. What's that?